This presentation is created by our group called the Trendsetters, presented by Nicole Frey, Jaclyn Citarella, Rose Caldero, and Suzanne. Grant Station. Who are they? The Grant Station started in 1999 for grant seekers in Alaska trying to move through the grant research and application process, and slowly expanded to what it is today. Today, Grant Station has not only developed an online presence as a resource for grant funders, but has also adapted to the changes within the nonprofit sector, with going as far as establishing a Twitter account for their organization. There are key people that manage the organization and few staff that offer support roles. Their focus is to provide resources to the nonprofit community to not only aid in the grant process, but to aid as a whole for those nonprofits seeking to make improvements in their ways of conducting work. It is a centralized location for many resources, including databases that can offer up good starting points or ideas for other possibilities. You may be asking yourself, how does this help us? Using Grant Station as a resource is a great central location to start if someone is new to grant writing and funding. Professionals that have participated in this field for many years are involved with the organization, as well as others that have backgrounds in other areas of work that offer unique perspectives and applications of techniques to the nonprofit sector. It is also a great opportunity to network with other organizations that use this website as a guide and resource tool. Ellen Mowrer, the vice president of the organization, is an employee of this organization that was contacted to not only provide insight into what she has seen as trends already for 2016, but also insight as to some common questions that grant seekers have and common errors grant seekers make. The questions and her answers will follow. We present to you Ellen Mowrer, who is the Vice President of Grant Station. All of the data that is provided here has been compiled from the State of Grant Seeking Reports. What are some of the biggest challenges when an organization is seeking funding through grants? What tends to be the common mistake most organizations make when requesting funding? Are there specific funding sources that your organization has seen early on in 2016 that have already been deemed popular with those seeking grants? In researching available grants, should an organization start with seeking federal or state government grant money or with non-government funding options? With time being the biggest challenge in researching and applying for grants, what is your suggestion to an organization that may not have the ability to fund a full-time grant writer but still wish to pursue grant funding? It is evident that a budget, location, and mission play a role in receiving a grant award for your organization. What would be a few other underlying factors or barriers that an agency should be cognizant of when writing your application? What factors should be emphasized or that need to stand out for an organization to be even considered? What would you eliminate or refrain from mentioning? The following questions were provided to Ellen Mowrer, and these are her responses. What are some of the biggest challenges when an organization is seeking funding through grants? Respondents continue to report that grant seeking's greatest challenges stem from the lack of time and staff for grant seeking activities. Increased competition for finite monies has placed greater emphasis on strict adherence to varying funder practices and requirements. Many respondents mentioned the difficulty in finding grant opportunities that matched with their specific mission, location, or program, regardless of their focus, service area, or interests. What tends to be the common mistake most organizations make when requesting funding? Insufficient research into the funder's current and future giving strategies and interests. And 2, a lack of strict adherence to varying funder practices and requirements. Are there specific funding sources that your organization has seen early on in 2016 that have already been deemed popular with those seeking grants? Private foundations, the federal government and local government increased as the largest source of total funding. There was no change in the community foundation rate, while corporations, state government, and other sources decreased as the largest source of total funding. Private foundations, the federal government, and local government increased as the source of the largest individual grant award. In researching available grants, should an organization start with seeking federal or state government grant money or with non-government funding options? Non-government funding. This chart illustrates the variation in funding source frequency by organizational budget size. Younger organizations tend to have smaller budgets. Federal and state funding tends to go to organizations with larger budgets that have shown success and sustainability through years of existence. With time being the biggest challenge in researching and applying for grants, what is your suggestion to an organization that may not have the ability to fund a full-time grant writer, but still wish to pursue grant funding? Organization, investment, and writing. Organization, gather and maintain all pertinent data for future use, including the IRS, tax status, organizational history, operating plan, budget, audited financial statements, balance sheets, needs statement, standard letter of inquiry, etc. Investment. Invest in research tools that assist in winnowing out by invitation-only funders. Invest in training for the volunteer or board member with grant writing responsibility. Invest the time to rank funders based on objective and subjective criteria, with mission interest, required reporting, etc., and apply only to the top 50%. Writing. Don't reinvent the wheel. Develop a standard grant proposal that can be edited to meet funder requirements. It is evident that a budget, location, and mission play a role in receiving a grant award for your organization. What would be a few other underlying factors or barriers that an agency should be cognizant of when writing your application? The median size of the largest grant award is a key benchmark to measure organizational grant-seeking success. Median award size is profoundly impacted by organizational budget size and the implied staff size. Organizational budget size varied by service area. Organizations in more populous service areas more frequently reported larger annual budgets. Again, median award size is profoundly impacted by organizational budget size and the implied staff size. The median largest award size is strongly impacted by organizational mission focus. Smaller median largest awards imply smaller organizational budget size and staff size. An organization should also note regional funding trends. For example, state government was the largest award source for 23% of organizations in the Middle Atlantic region, but for only 6% in the Pacific region. What factors should be emphasized or that need to stand out for an organization to be even considered? What would you eliminate or refrain from mentioning? It is more a matter of applying to appropriate funders. For example, new small budget organizations will find greater success applying to private foundations and other grant sources, including religious organizations, the United Way, donor-advised funds, civic organizations, and tribal funds. Established organizations and those focused on education or public benefit may find success with the federal government. This is why investing time on funder research is critical to successful grant seeking. In addition, funders are increasingly showing preference to grant proposals that are based on knowing and understanding the leading edge trends in the world of philanthropy and how they relate to the mission over grant proposals based only on the topic or issue at hand. Questions. Who will fund my organization? What is a reasonable level of funding to expect for my organization? Does my budget, location, or mission affect my organization's ability to be awarded grants? Who will fund my organization? Once you have established your organization as a 501c3, the next question occurs. Who will fund our organization, project, or program? According to Grantspace, nonprofit programs can utilize the following sources of income in order to carry out their mission: fees for goods and/or services, individual donations and major gifts, bequests, government grants and contracts, corporate contribution, interest from investments, loans, program-related investments, PRIs, or membership dues and fees. How to identify grants to fund your nonprofit organization. When an organization is trying to identify grants to fund their organization, the organization should seek funding in their subject and geographical area. Funders' interests aligns with the organizational mission, problem of need, and population your organization intends to serve. Grants are usually awarded to nonprofit organizations for a particular type of support. Example, funding for a new playground, environmental groups, specific population, example, children, and certain types of nonprofits such as churches and community action agencies. Here are some great resources to utilize to identify U.S. government funding grants. When using the catalog, be sure to search under 3 levels: federal, state, and local. This will vary from state to state. What is a reasonable level of funding to expect for my organization? A reasonable level of funding depends on the following: budget size, service area, and mission focus. Research is one of the most important aspects of writing grants. Funding has changed. There is less dollars and more restrictions. The first thing is to define your organization by budget, service area, or mission. Grant cycles have changed, affecting organizations. The monies are coming in slower and in lower amounts. Reasonable level of funding. Search for the rates of funding by the largest source or largest individual award for the organization type. Look for other similar organizations that have had success in receiving funds. Apply both online and offline. Set reasonable expectations. Increase 2 to 4% for 2016. Using a mix of techniques will improve your chances. Setting realistic expectation of grant awards that match your total budget. Does my budget, location, or mission affect my organization's ability to be awarded grants? Factors that affect eligibility: demographics, time, budget size, organizational size, competition, and lack of resources. Eligibility is a major element in the funder guidelines. Budget size, location, and mission are all mitigating factors that play a deciding role in searching for a grant and in receiving a grant award. Assess your demographics. Make sure your organization encompasses the region or service area that falls under the guidelines. Time is of the essence. Does your agency have the time to fulfill the objectives? Do you have enough staffing and resources to make this grant successful? Budget size and organizational size are factors that all funders look at. Is the agency fiscally sound? Can your agency fulfill the expected guidelines? Competition is important. Who will you compete with? Look around you. Are there other agencies that have similar missions and initiatives as yours? Don't create duplication. What resources are needed? Ensure your capabilities. Criteria for success. During the grant search process, create steps to ensure eligibility. Does your organization match the funder guidelines, criteria they are looking for? What does the service area around you look like? Does your agency mission fall under the categories of what this area envelops? Consider your competition. How do you stand outside of the rest? What makes you unique? Create your own brand. Build your capacity for sustainability and growth. Become a community partner that the community can trust. Planning is key in grant research and writing. Obtaining a grant is more than just finding the funding online and applying. It requires thoughtful execution by those familiar with the grant process within the nonprofit organization. Pay attention to trends. Grantstations reports on the trends in funding are useful resources as they give an overall view on where most of the funding has gone in previous years, therefore making a prediction for where future funding will possibly go. Secure the funds. Maintain the funds. Just because funds are gained does not mean an organization should change the work they did to get the funding in the first place. The key is to stand out and make your organization different from the rest so that funders want to invest in you. For more information, GrantStation's website is full of resources and information that can provide not only links to databases with grant funding opportunities, but also resources to help outline grant proposals as well as to help manage successful grant writing. Please review the following references that were utilized for this report.